part of me, I speak only of the survival skills here, but part of me was envious of all the things you learned about how to take care of yourself. And then there was the sexual abuse and other abuse and lack of love and all the other things, which we'll talk about. But can we just spend a minute on the survival skills and how you did survive up there and how your mother knew all of this to teach you?
I want to pay tribute to my mother who passed last year for teaching me how to not only survive in the wilderness, but how to appreciate the great intricacies and interdependencies of the ecosystem that is north of Los Angeles. And that has served me in many ways throughout my life, not because I any longer need to survive in that way, but because I know that the earth can provide for us. And it is also just a wonderful gift to be able to recognize different birds, different animals, and many, many, many plants. My mother's knowledge was self-taught. She was, I guess, obsessed would be the word. She was obsessed with learning every single thing in our ecosystem. So she was so skilled, in fact, and knowledgeable that government workers at the ranger station that was not too far away, we weren't allowed to go there, but my mother did when the men weren't around. So let me just go back 1 second and say that it used to be an entirely male organization. And my mother was born into this 100% male organization. She had 3 older brothers. And so she was very used to figuring out how to get around whatever the rules were. And her father actually did find her unique and intelligent, and he gave her more leeway, I think, than anyone else had in the cult.
It's tough for a cult that has only men to survive. So good move.
So they eventually brought in women, but yes, you're very astute at that. But let me say that at the beginning, my grandfather just had followers that he demanded be celibate. So in the 1930s, he had some young men who followed him, who stayed with him all the way until his death in the 1980s. And so I know for a fact, because I knew these men, I can't attest for sure that they're celibate, but they were alone. And they stayed with him for a very long time. And it wasn't until my mother got into her 20s that I think he recognized that he needed to allow women to be in the organization. So she married one of his early followers. And after, she was the very first marriage at the Fields. And there were women who then married into the organization afterwards. And there were lots of girls, still male dominated, but there were girls and women after my mother got married.
So how did you live? Were you in a tent? Describe your living circumstances to us.
Well, when we first came to the mountain, which was in the fall when I was almost 8, we lived in a mess hall. So a mess hall is, that's what it was called, kind of a military quarters, but it was one room. And there was a big stone fireplace. So we were not out in the cold. We had an outhouse down the hill. So I don't know how far away the outhouse was, less than a quarter of a mile. And we would walk down to the outhouse, and there was a sink. So there was some running water in the kitchen, and the great room and all these army bunks. It was all in one room. And so we slept on army bunks.
And what were you eating? Because I know food was always an issue.
Well, interestingly, and I have this a little bit in the book, we did forage for acorns and lots of nuts. We were not killing animals. We were living off of plants, so plant-based diet. But the government actually gave us surplus. So there were times, not immediately, but I don't know exactly how long in, where they would come by and unload from a truck whatever was available. So cans of peanuts or Caro syrup, sometimes fruit cocktail, and sometimes blocks of butter and sometimes cheese, depending on, what the government had as surplus at the time. So It's very interesting that we were living on government land, even though the government didn't know what we were doing there.
Yeah. And that must have felt like such a delicacy to get some fruit cocktail and some cheese after foraging for acorns.
Absolutely. I don't even know if we were supposed to eat it, but we used to there was kind of a dug-in walk-in, and my sisters and I would sneak in there and get the food because we had a can opener. So we would, it was an incredible delicacy. And I'm very grateful to the government actually for that program, at least at that time. So we had an army Jeep that my father also got from the government surplus. So he had been drafted and he was very militaristic. That was the training that he got, that he believed helped him become a man. And so he trained all his children, girls, and the one boy that he had to work in a military system, which we were not military, but we were trained to behave as if we were.
Well, I was going to say that the deprivation was a feature, not a bug. So can you expand on that? Because it was a life of deprivation.
Thank you for noticing that. You have very astute observations. It was a feature. It was intentional. The deprivation was to help us, for one, lead the army of God in the time of the apocalypse. So they believed that there would be 1,000 years of a reign of terror on the earth, and that we would have to live without. And that as we were hiding in the rocks of the mountains, that if we could survive on very little, then we would be able to outwit honestly, it was, I think, a little psychotic very psychotic, but we received things from the government, but they also feared the government. So they thought that whatever political leaders might be coming next would be our enemies. And so we would need to survive without having access to the things that ordinary citizens had access to.
Some people take CBD for better sleep or less stress or more calm. Some take it for pain relief, better energy, or better focus and concentration. Today, I want to tell you about CB Distillery and their over 2 million satisfied customers. According to a poll of their customers, 90% reported they do sleep better with CBD. 81% say CBD helps with stress, and 80% say CBD helps with aches and pains after physical activity. If you struggle to get a good night's sleep, if you're dealing with too much stress and you could use a little calm in your life, if you suffer with pain and discomfort, especially after physical exercise, you could give CBD a try from cbdistillery.com. Use my 20% discount by visiting cbdistillery.com and enter my initials MK for your discount. No prescription required. That's cbdistillery.com, promo code MK for 20% off. cbdistillery.com. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.